So this ridge, I have done a little bit of work on this, and I have sort of sharpened up my ideas from last time. My recommendation to you now in mixing the ridge is to just use these two colours in varying proportions. So that's lamp black and yellow green. So the more yellow green, the more of the highlights that you'd be putting in. So I'll take you through to just a bit of an image here of the ridge, and you can see those nice highlights. But we've got this idea that for every bush there's a dark underside and an upside which is in light, which is relatively bright. They're all mostly the same shade of green, or some of these salt bushes are a little bit more of a bluey green rather than a yellowy green. And so how I do this, how I've kind of built up this, as you can see, there's like little bally shapes, some lines, but not big long lines, pretty irregular, you know, slight downward slope, that's one thing. Dark on the bottom, light on the top, but then the rest of it has a random element to it. So yeah, I'll show you, here's what I've done. I got my line about right. I've got a dark side, underside, and a brighter upside. And I've tried to make those shapes relatively random. And I've been mixing various proportions of yellow green and lamp black. Let me just grab a little bit of the yellow green, and I'll go a little bit more on this. I'll sort of show you what my highlights might look like. So I'm mixing up quite a relatively, you can see in comparison to the colours I've got, I've ploughed in a lot more of the yellow green there. So we'll see what we get. So what you'd be doing is just looking to kind of drop that on top of the bushes. You're not going bloop and painting it. It's more like a little accent. You try and avoid regular lines. So you just put a little bit here and there. But this is working quite okay now. It's you've seen that underlying picture that we're working off, and it has got those yellowy greeny colours. So I've mixed, as you've seen, a relatively high proportion of the yellow green in there, and then that's giving me the sort of coverage I want down here. Yeah, so look, that would be how I tackle this ridge. It's a slope, dark on the underside, green, yellow on the upside, and then a random sort of collection of shapes. So I'm not painting like that. I'm kind of just dropping paint in a more of a random sort of process. Okay, so that's that one. And what I'm saying to you is just, you know, for your super highlights on that, you'd be putting in just a really high proportion of that yellow green. So there'd just be a few bushes where you'd throw that in, just to really accentuate that sun. But yeah, that would be the end of that detail phase. The other thing I would suggest that you had a bit of a look at as you go through doing the ridge bit is your sand, of course. We did that last time, and how it looked last time was something like that. And then the process from there on in is to get some, like a dark mix, and then just to nibble into that and make it look as though the sand is underneath. So I'm just loading up with mainly a lamp black with a bit of yellow green in, and I'm sort of putting bushes on top. Not totally covering it, but making it appear more as though the sand has come through. And the end of that process, not quite the end, but, you know, as I refine that and put in model structures into this ridge, you know, I start to get closer and closer to what I want. I'd encourage you with this ridge, so I've got some, I'll just mix up something here, some titanium white, also known as tight white for people who don't want to spend too much time talking. So I've mixed up a white, not super happy with that. It's got a little bit of green in it, which I don't really want. So I'm going to see if I can get that out of the brush and put some, I really want more of a browny kind of mix. So a bit of that, and I just want the tiniest amount of burnt umber. Burnt umber, as you know, is a trap for young players. So what you would do, I'm not really happy with that. That's a bit, it's not the colour I want. Once I sort of got roughly to the colour I want, I just fill that in. This isn't working terribly well. Try again. And I'm just going along that ridge line and just getting a nice crisp edge. It's not, these edges are super crucial, so in the impression that you create in the painting. So it's really good to go back and just give some coverage so that you can get back to what you really were wanting to generate on that edge. So I'm just going in there and really covering anywhere where there's colour coming through. Look, it ended up a little bit too yellow, but you've seen the process of really sharpening up this ridge so that it looks realistic, like it's got various undulations in it, but you've got a nice clear demarcation, a bit like a horizon line. So you don't want, you know, vague distinctions here. A nice sharp line is really good. So that's that. There's a couple of other things to put into the rocks up the back here. I want to put something a little bit light in there. I'll show you what I'm doing. So these rocks here, I think there's a car park where a coffee shop, little mobile coffee shop sits. People tend to watch the waves. So let me, I'm going to go a bit of burnt umber into that. And I've just grabbed a little bit of black from another mix that I had. And what I'm trying to generate, that sort of look there. So a little bit lighter. So let's see if I'm in the ballpark for this particular lighter here. So let's see what I've got. Ooh, too light, okay. So I'm going to clean my brush. I'll just get a little bit of that off. I'll get a little bit more lamp black. It was too light. So I'm keeping it side by side and just sort of checking where I was and where I am now. Okay, so a little bit darker. Could go a little bit more. Let's try that. So that's the sort of brown look I want to get. It's a little bit tricky because I've got that is, to me, is not too bad. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. So I'm just going to kind of bring this back. And it goes out kind of finishes about part of the way through that rock. So, oops. Now, if you were, you felt you'd strayed off a bit, you can always try and feather it back in with a dry brush to create more like a flat car part. Reasonably happy with that. Okay. There are also some rocks out to sea, which you can see have some lightness, a little bit of lightness in them. So I'm going to use something similar here for them. I've got some black marks, so I'm just going to drop a little bit of, not much, but little bits of highlights of those rocks. Yeah, so you can see it's just created an impression of that. And then we've got this area in here, which is quite a bit lighter. So I'm going to just sort of, whoops, I wasn't doing that very well for you to see. So I'm just throwing a little bit of colour in there, or a little bit of lightness into there. Okay, so there are a couple of little things that I've done to create some impressions of light out there on the canal rocks. Okay, good time to finish. I'll come back in the next video to look at the ocean waves.